Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
He might be one of the most enduring federal inspectors general, having served Justice Departments under the Obama, Trump, Biden, and second Trump administrations. He's also been a regular guest here on the Federal Drive. Joining me for my final interview with him, Michael Horowitz. Michael, good to have you in.
It's great to be here, and it's hard to believe it's the final interview.
Well, yeah, it sounds
Stay.
Yeah, I'd love to. You know, it's good and painful at the same time to leave work you love.
Right.
And I do love it every day. But, you know, you get to the point where it's time to try to go to that second chapter in life, or third or fourth, fifth chapter. I lost count here. But 13 years as Inspector General in the same department, and it's been a controversial period for the department. Because of, well, I don't have to tell you about the issues, but you're not tired yet yourself, are you?
It's been a remarkable 13 years. Yesterday, April 16th, was the 13-year anniversary of my getting sworn in, and a lot more interesting work than I frankly expected when I showed up. Because
you had done a stint of 10 or 11 years as a prosecutor before leaving for private practice and then coming back. And did anything as a prosecutor in Southern District of New York's no slouch, prepare you for what you would have to do as IG?
I've actually often said that probably the best preparation for this job, or among the best preparations for this job, was that stint as a prosecutor and going to a courtroom when you're in front of a judge and a jury and you have to explain to them why you're bringing this case, why you're there, particularly for the 12 jurors sitting there. Most of whom probably don't want to be there. And if you're a juror, you have to sit there quietly and just listen to lawyers, which probably is the worst job in the world to do. And you have to explain to them why it was important that they gave up their day jobs, their family time, whatever they gave up to come to court, to be there to listen to this case. And that's partly the job we do as inspectors general when we write our reports. Why is this report important? Why does this matter to you? And so that was great training for this job.
And you've had some interesting recent reports. It sounds arcane, but you looked at a contract of the FBI for the management of the destruction of media. That is a $21 million contract, not a big thing in any way. But it said we found management and oversight deficiencies consistent with previous OIG findings related to FBI contracting activities.
Right.
So it was kind of another example of something that's ongoing. And it must be tough to come at an agency like the FBI over and over again for contracting deficiencies.
It is, and it just shows the breadth of the work that IGs do and the importance of the work we do. Obviously, a lot of the work we do makes headlines, but reports like these are the bread and butter of the work we do, and they build on one another. We see improvement, for example, in contracting at the FBI and other parts of the department from when I started 13 years ago. But it's an iterative process, and our reports build on each other. And as long as you're seeing that constant improvement, you feel like your reports have helped the agency improve its operations, which is really what our mission is.
Because there is an oversight and a statutory and regulatory aspect to all of this and a financial aspect, you found that they were proper in their awarding to an Alaska Native company. But if they don't oversee the destruction of media, I guess in theory that could lead to a hard drive with classified information making its way out into the wild.
Right. And that's one of the big issues, as we go forward and we see these, we're writing reports about waste, fraud, and abuse, about how to do contracting the right way, which saves taxpayers money. But then also at the Justice Department, certainly looking at sensitive material that they have and how are they handling it? How are they disposing of it? And that was another disturbing part of what we saw here. And if the viewers go and look at that report, they'll see pictures that we've been using. And one of the changes in my 13 years, we're trying to do more visual aspect to it. And so the public can see, not only read what we found, but see some of the problems visually.
And that case, again, exemplifies kind of the range of what IGs have to do. There's statutory things, there's regulatory, there's also financial auditing.
Correct.
As well as just big issues where, unfortunately, politics and regulation and statute come together. And so you need to maintain a workforce. You've got about 500 people in that IG's office. How do you make sure that you've got the balance of people that can handle the breadth of types of arcana that come your way.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges we have, particularly in our audit space and our evaluations and inspection space, where it is that type of breadth of work that we need people to be able to do. And really what we're looking for and the people we bring on are people who can ask hard questions, good questions, frankly not unlike journalists like yourself, to get to the heart of the issue and to understand it, and who are people who can be generalists because we deal with this breadth of issues. I mean, our financial statement auditors, for example, as you said, it's really the bread and butter of what an IG office does, which is to make sure the department is handling its books and records in accordance with government accounting standards. Our financial information security auditors, right, are looking at IT security issues, probably among the most important issues that we deal with. We put out multiple reports each year on FISMA related, the great acronym, for those audits. If the department or an agency fails in that FISMA space, in that information security space, everybody's at risk with their security, not just department employees.
Sure. We're speaking with Michael Horowitz, Inspector General of the Justice Department. And then there are issues like January 6th, the issue, the event that keeps on giving is the way I like to put it. And just recently, some senators wanted to know about informants and whether other agencies besides the FBI had unassigned or assigned informants and all of this. And, the reports that you have had on January 6th for over the several years now were just bound to be, aha, on one side, and see, even Horowitz is no good on the other side. And how do you navigate all of that? Because there's just no way both sides are going to accept anything you do.
So one of the things I learned from the beginning, and to the credit of the people in my office who taught me this, our job is to put out the facts. The facts have to be out there for the public. That's really what we're about as an IG, transparency over what occurred. And that's what we've tried to do in all of the areas we've done, whether it was on the FISA-related audits, January 6th, ATF's Fast and Furious, back at the start of my tenure.
That's another one, yeah.
I've always been about trying to be fact-centric. What happened? People can then disagree about what those facts mean. But one of the things that's been critical from my standpoint, one of the things I've been proudest of in my 13 years is we put out facts, and while people have disputed and argued over what those facts mean, in our biggest cases, no one's come back to us and said, you got that fact wrong. We found a new fact you didn't have. And that's a credit not to me, but to the people who do these and literally look through millions, 1 million plus records, do dozens and dozens of interviews. And that's really what we need to get to. And going back to your earlier question, it's something you learn as a prosecutor or as a defense lawyer, which is you need to go in the courtroom, no matter which table you're sitting at, knowing the facts better than your opponent and better than anyone else in the courtroom.
And in recent administrations, charges, and this goes both ways, of politicization of law enforcement or whatever, or of investigations by the FBI on that case, have come to what happens.
Right.
And do you worry that this kind of ricocheting back and forth of the FBI and the prosecution function of the Justice Department is going to just have an erosive effect over time?
Yeah, the Justice Department, its lawyers, its agents, all of its employees play such a critical role in ensuring the delivery of a strong justice system in our country. And it obviously is disheartening and disappointing when you issue reports and you see the failures that occur. But our job is to report on what happened, whether it's good or bad. We're not the policymakers. We're not the decision makers as IGs. That's, in our blood, we're not the policymakers. We're there to put out the information. And ultimately, when you find failures, you make recommendations to hopefully improve the organization. And it's a key to making sure that occurs. And frankly, that's the whole idea of the IG model, which is to give the public the reassurance that if there are failures, if there are abuses, if there are misuses of power at the Justice Department, for example, that will be uncovered, that will be addressed, there will be accountability, and there will be reform.
And when people accuse the department of this, that, or the other, and it goes, again, both ways, do you ever say to yourself, well, I wish you'd read all 200 pages of the report? I mean, the responsible parties do read most of it.
Right.
The editorial writers at the, let's say, mainstream established media, those editorial writers are informed people on the specific issues they write about. But the bulk of media today, they might get through the executive summary, certainly not going to get through the appendices, where you sometimes find the real depth of understanding. Is it frustrating when you see opinions where you can tell they haven't read through the details?
Yeah, it certainly can be frustrating to see people talking about reports without having gone through them. And in fact, I've given presentations to folks and they've asked questions, and I can tell they're coming from whatever side of the issue they're on. And I've occasionally asked, my report was 30 pages, 40 pages, whatever it was. Could you raise your hand if you actually read it? And very few hands end up going up. And I say, just read the report and then form your own opinion. But form your own opinion from reading something. And, that's so important. That's why we write these reports, to, as you said, to put the information out there in the text, in the footnotes. But we try and get all the information out there so an informed reader can make their own judgment. They don't have to agree with our analysis. I just want them to be able to read the facts.
And this is probably a post-retirement for you question, but you have had Attorneys General Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr, Merrick Garland, and now Pam Bondi. And do you have regular contact with them, and how are you getting along with Pam?
Yeah. So one of the great strengths of our office, and I know this hasn't always been the case with other offices and other departments because I was the chair of the IG Council, so I've heard the wide range of relationships that occurred. I'm only the fourth IG at the Justice Department in almost 40 years of our history. We've had continuity on the IG side, and the other part of this has been so important is we've had very strong working relationships with the Attorneys General and the Deputy Attorneys Generals across administrations. I can say that from talking to my predecessors and from my own experience, and that's made a huge difference. We don't always agree, but we always are able to talk through issues, to explain to each other our views. We've always had the respect of the Attorneys General and the Deputy Attorneys General, of our independence and our ability to make our own judgment. Famously talked about that with Attorney General Barr when we were doing work, and his view was, you've got your job as the Inspector General, go say what you think, and I'm the Attorney General, and I have an obligation to give my view of things. And I think that's been something that's been very important as to the successes of our office throughout our now almost 40 years.
And just a question about Barr and Garland. Both of those were vilified by people on the other side of the party in which they were employed. And did you ever say to yourself, I wish those people writing this knew the guy I know, both for, say, Barr and Garland, because I think they were probably the most extremely used attorneys general in recent times.
Yeah, although I would say that probably every attorney general I've worked under, both during my tenure as IG and in my prior career as a federal prosecutor, I've seen that happen with attorneys general. Worked initially under Janet Reno and John Ashcroft, who
and
both
was,
were
Ed Meese, I guess. Goes with.
Well, that was before me.
That was before. Well, I remember him, but it was before my time here.
So. But yeah, it's very interesting when you're in government because you're working with people in private, and then there's the public persona or the public perception of those individuals. And in many instances, it's very different what you see in private and the engagement you have. But all of us sign up for these jobs understanding that there are going to be strong views about how we do our jobs and how we do our work, and each person deals with it differently.
And final question, do you feel well served by the media?
Yes, in the sense that we've tried very hard to make sure our reports get the public attention they deserve. And I've found the media very accommodating in that regard, not always writing what we wanted. That isn't what we're looking for. But importantly, making sure the public is aware of the work we do, our findings, and our reports. And that's been the important part of the relationship. And
actually, one more question I had was concerning the Bureau of Prisons.
Yes.
Which, not a big system. It is in some sense, but in terms of dollars and people, it's nothing like the FBI and so on. And yet that has been just a persistent, open wound that just never seems to get better.
It's been probably the biggest challenge and something I'd wished to see improve more over my 13 years here. I testified about this a couple of times, that this is not a new problem with the BOP. In my mind, it's been going on for probably at least 20 years. My predecessor, Glenn Fine, has talked about the challenges when he was the IG, and we've both seen the Bureau of Prisons struggle over the years because of leadership challenges. The incoming BOP director, I think, will be the 8th BOP director in my 11 years, both acting and interim and official. Well, very hard to lead an organization when you have that much change going on constantly. And it needs to be focused on by the administrations, needs to be focused on by Congress, and there needs to be a game plan. And what I've talked with the Comptroller General, Gene Dodaro, about this, there needs to be a game plan from the BOP side, a well-thought-through, executed management plan supported by not just the Justice Department's Attorney General, but the President and by the leadership in Congress, to have a plan for multi-year fixes of this, because that's the only way it's going to happen.
Well, I want to thank you for being with us so many times over the years and in studio. It's been a pleasure, and I've learned a lot.
Well, thanks. It's been great being here with you, and appreciate all your support and all the great stories you've done over the years, not just on our IG office, but on IGs generally. You've highlighted the work we've done, and it's so important to have that information out there for the public.
Michael Horowitz is Inspector General of the Justice Department. We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Hear the Federal Drive on demand. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.